Well, for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Michael Grose. I'm lead pastor of Quarry Church, and it's a privilege to be with you this morning. Welcome. I'm really glad that you're here, that you're physically here. And there are some of you who are joining us online right now, and a special welcome to you. Really glad that you're here as well. If you would, just do me a favor, just in these moments, drop something in the chat box. Just a hello, a thumbs up, just something that lets us know that you are here. One of the things about being at a distance is we don't get to do this together. And so we want to be as together as we can, and that will help us out. That's one of the benefits of the church, right, is we walk through this life together. It's our privilege, especially during seasons like this. This has been a season of change, right? This has been a week of new beginnings for a lot of us, right? Maybe you started a new class. Maybe you started a whole new school. Maybe as a parent, you started some new routines, right? Dropping kids off, picking kids up. You're back in the flow of things. A little later in the day, you got to do the same thing all over again. Run into things in the evening. This is kind of a bittersweet thing, right? The sweet part of this is, we move out of kind of the chaos of summer into a little bit more predictability and some rhythm of fall, and the bitter part is we move out of the predictability or the chaos, of summer. Some of us like the chaos of summer. Some of us like the warmth of summer. It's time of change. Well, this week was a week of new beginnings for my family as well. So we have my wife and I have three daughters, two older boys. Our three daughters are still in school, and we actually we have a fourth child that's living with us, Paula, who's a foreign exchange student from Malaga, Spain. If you see her, please welcome her. She started as a student at Monticello High School as a sophomore. Our next child, Atira, she started as a junior at the high school, and then we have our oldest daughter. She's finishing up at Wheaton this year, so she left us. And then, like some of you, we had the bittersweet privilege, I'll call it that, honor of dropping our middle girl off in Seattle. Like literally, we flew on a plane together, and then we got off the plane and spent some time, and then we got back on, and she stayed. And that was hard. That was hard. And I'm not going to give you guys all the details. Just let you know I'm probably a little dehydrated today. Lost a lot of fluid over the weekend through all the tears. But man, I'll say this. We love each of our children dearly, and saying goodbye never gets easy. Never gets easy. Even though you know that the child is ready and God is with them, there's grieving there. There's an angst. And so I'm not going to tell you all the details of the week, but I will. I want to share with you the very start of the week, because that will kind of lead us into the message. So it's Monday morning. I'll take you to my Monday morning. Got up about 4:30 in the morning. We had a flight to catch, right? My wife and I and Eliana are going to get on a plane and fly to Seattle. And so it's like an 8:50 flight. Wake up early. I want to make sure things are in order. And we had a really cool thing happen. So most of my kids were home, and everybody wanted to see her off. So we were all going to join. We were all going to jump into the Yukon one last time, and drive to the airport, say goodbye, and it was awesome. But that meant that everybody had to be up, and we all had to move. A tribe. We have to move together. And so I got up early to kind of make sure that happened, move some cars around, load up the truck, feed and water the dogs, shake the kids. It's time to go. And so we did pretty well. I mean, for us, the pull out the driveway time, the goal was 6 a.m. We were moving at 6:15. All right, pretty close for us. But while we started to move, someone from the back said, hey, wait, I forgot the guitar. So we needed to bring a guitar for my son who lives in Seattle. And so Noah jumped out of the truck, ran down the driveway, ran back up, took a couple more minutes. But that's okay, because we had some margin built in, right? Flight leaves at 8:51, got some margin. We're doing okay. So now we're pulling out of the driveway. And as we get to the top, I start moving forward. My low fuel light goes on in my car. I'm like, oh man, that's a rookie mistake. I should have done this last night. I should have taken care of this last night. But that's okay because we've got margin. We're good. We're good. So I pull over to a local gas station, fill that behemoth up to the very top. You know, we fill this thing up, and as I'm fueling this thing, all of a sudden my tire monitoring system lets me know that I've got low air in 2 of my tires. I'm like, oh, okay, there is an air compressor at this gas station, and I've got margin. So no big deal. We can handle this. We're good, right? So fill the air up. Kids are all in the car. My wife's in the car. Bags are in the car. We're good, right? So take off. Get on the freeway entrance ramp, and I push the pedal down, and all 6.2 liters of that engine just roar, and it's a lot of fun. And we just take off like a rocket, and yes, here we go. We're going to do this. It's going to be awesome. And I get to the top of the ramp, and I realize I don't have my phone. Like I don't have my phone with me, so I'm patting. In all I did, I don't have my phone. I'm checking the car door. I don't have my phone. I look at my wife. She goes, "Can you ping me? Can you ping my phone? It's got to be in here." She's pinging, and there's no pinging in the car, right? It's not there. So she goes one better, and she does the locate thing, and it says, "Your phone's at home. Your phone's not with you." And so then I start doing the math, right? I think, all right, so I'm about 10 miles from the nearest exit, and then it's about 10 to 15 miles back, and then I've got to find the phone. I don't even know where the phone is. And then just to clarify, I go, all right, just to make sure that it's not in here, would somebody else clarify that the phone's not in here? And all 3 of my daughters get on their phones, and they go, like in harmony. It's at home, it's at home, it's at home. Like, your phone's really not there. Well, they're being real compassionate with me. They say, "Papa, we have to go back. You've got to go back and get your phone. Because what are you going to do for 5 days without your phone?" Right? And I'm thinking, okay, if I go back, we have margin. I might be able to do this. Just maybe, if everything aligns, we'll be okay. But then I start doing dad math. Like, this is advanced dad math. Like, I'm starting to take into consideration the tension that's building in my car right now, because not everybody handles these situations the same in my family. You know, while the girls might be saying, "Hey, go," really they're saying, we feel obligated to tell you to go back and get it, but really we don't want you to go get it. But we can't say that out loud, but really that's kind of what's going on here. And so in a very short order, I decide, all right, we're not gonna get the phone. All right, we're just gonna, we don't have that much margin anymore. And so I spent 5 days without my phone. Now, I'd love to tell you that this was some sort of great spiritual exercise, and man, fasting from technology and God just showed up in amazing ways. But that's not the story. That's not what I learned in 5 days without my phone, right? What I learned in 5 days without my phone is I need my phone. I mean, my phone's an important thing. I'm not this Facebook guy. I'm not scrolling all the time. I'm not trying to create my latest TikTok video, although I learned a little TikTok thing this past week. That's not why I use my phone. Now, I have my own thing, right? I check the weather incessantly. Like every hour I'm on my weather app. What's happening? Like it's going to change, But that's it. But really, I use it to communicate. I want to communicate with people. I want to text people, talk to people. I use it. It's my Bible. I have it with me all the time, and so it's there. I use it to take pictures. I use it to take direction. I am infinitely smarter with my phone, and so it's there to answer all kinds of questions for me. So without my phone for 5 days, what I experienced was isolation. I mean, I felt like I was dumb. I was uninformed. I was incredibly inefficient. And I was isolated. And I know, first world pains, right? I'm still alive and, the world's still turning. But it was real for me nonetheless, because in a very real sense, it was kind of weird. I was present with those who were present, but they weren't always present with me because they had their own devices. And I wasn't able to talk with the people that I loved. So in a real way, my world kind of went dark. Now I want to take you back 20 years in time to a moment in time where our world really did go dark. On September 11th, 2001, some of you guys lived through this. Some of you weren't born. You've only heard about this. Some of you have this timeline memorized. That at 8:47, a Boeing 767 flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And at the time, nobody really knew what was happening. We thought it was an accident of some kind. But the newsreels all lit up, right? And this was before smartphones or anything like that. So we were all glued to our television sets. You know, people kind of huddled around going, what in the world is happening? Look at this. This was some sort of spectacle, right? But then that all changed, right when at 9:02, as we were all watching our televisions, a second plane flew into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. And then at 9:41 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 flew into the Pentagon. And in those moments, the world, it felt like it was coming apart. At 9:50 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center, 110 floors, just imploded. At 10 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 crashed into the hills some 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. And then at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower also collapsed on itself. And in those moments, the world really was falling apart. Victims trapped in buildings, passengers on plane, desperately trying to get in touch with people that they love. But the world had gone dark. Messages were left, texts were sent, but no response. Family members, literally desperate to hear anything, went for days not knowing. In the end, 2,977 people were killed that day. 19 hijackers committed murder-suicide, and more than 6,000 others were injured. It was a day that changed the course of our country, a day that changed our world. It caused unthinkable pain, but ironically, it brought much of the world together. So this morning, I feel it is appropriate for us to just be still and remember. Remember that which is worth remembering about that day. Remember the people's lives that were lost. Real people with real families who experienced real loss. People like Joe Vassiano and Angela Perez and Paul Ortiz and Larissa Taylor and Tom Bennett. Remember the heroes that rose up that day. I mean, many who gave their lives so that others could live. Emergency responders who, they did the unthinkable. They ran into these buildings and they went up flight after flight after flight after flight of stairs trying to rescue anybody. And people like Father Michael Judge, a chaplain for the New York Fire Department. He was casualty number 1. He died while reading the last rites to another fallen firefighter hit by debris. And it's interesting that his story has kind of become legendary because people believe that he was victim number 1 because God needed someone to lead all of the other people to him that day. Remember a nation united, a nation that came together. I mean, especially during this time, our time right now, of hyper division, right, where we are more separated than we've ever been before. But that tragedy of 9/11 brought the people called the United States of America, it brought us together. We were one, if only for a short time. Remember that in a moment of clarity, this country recognized its need for God. We gathered, following that tragedy, we gathered in places of worship in record number as we came to terms with our own mortality. We were asking bigger questions in those days. Remember that even in the darkest moments, God is there. God was there on that day. God is here now. God is faithful. And in His presence, despite the circumstances, there is hope. With God, there is always hope. With God, there is even joy. Now, that's not news to those of you who are followers of Jesus, right? Because you've read it. The Bible is really clear. It teaches that joy is available, that it should be kind of the state of being of those who follow Jesus regardless of circumstance. There's a joy that if properly nourished, if nurtured, it can overtake even the greatest heartache, the greatest brokenness. Jesus, he prays this prayer really over us to the Father in John 17. He's praying for you, His followers. He says, I pray that they may have the full measure of my joy with them. That's His prayer for you, that you may have joy. One chapter before, He says to His disciples, you will rejoice and no one will take away your joy. That's the promise. No one can take away your joy. Now you need to understand who Jesus is talking to in this moment. Really, He's teaching His disciples, His closest followers, men who are going to experience incredible trouble. They're going to be robbed of everything they own, tortured, and put to death. And the promise is that nothing, not disease, not a pandemic, not isolation, not loneliness, not torture, not even death can take their joy. Now, if you're like me, I've been a follower of Jesus for over 30 years. Man, I read that and I think, what is wrong with me? I mean, really, what's wrong with what's up with my joy? Why is my joy so fleeting, so fickle? I mean, it's like I'm on this roller coaster, and all the circumstances around me affect my joy. How's your joy? I think most of us don't really understand joy. We don't understand how to nurture it. We don't understand it's a gift that we actually have. But Paul's going to teach us today. The Apostle Paul is going to teach us. So if you have your Bibles, open up to Romans chapter 8. And I want to encourage you to bring your Bible when you're here. It can be a digital Bible. It can be an analog paper Bible. But bring it because I want you to become students of Scripture. I'll have the passages up on the screen, absolutely. But I want to encourage you, man, dig into God's Word. It's for you. In Romans chapter 8, I think I said Romans, he writes about trouble. He writes about persecution, about nakedness and poverty, that this is what the real world is, and this is how we, as His followers, are to live in that world. And then in verses 28 through 30, Paul offers these three kind of foundational principles for finding joy in the midst of a world full of suffering. He tells us that if we follow Christ, that our bad things turn into good things, and that our good things cannot be lost, and that the best things are yet to come. That there is a reason for our joy, despite circumstance. Verse 28 reads this, and you might find this incredibly familiar. Paul writes, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Now, I want you to grab hold. Paul's saying a lot in that sentence. He starts out by declaring, hear this, that all things happen to Jesus' followers. All things. Right? That Christian circumstance is no different than anybody else's circumstance. This is so important for us to understand if we're going to experience this relentless and trauma-proof joy. I mean, hear what Paul is saying. He's saying terrible things happen to the people who love God. Welcome to Quarry Church. I mean, that doesn't sound very, very good, right? It doesn't sound like good news, but it's truth. It's reality setting for all of us. Maybe you've been living under the impression that if we love God, if we serve God, then we won't have as many bad things happen to us. But that's not true. Man, horrible things happen to those who believe in and love and serve God. All the same things that happen to everybody else in this world happen to people who love God. All things in this instance really means all things. And that's where we start. It's a point of reality for us. Now the next thing Paul says is that when things work together in your life, that's not chance. It's not just luck. It's because of God. Notice Paul doesn't say that things work together for good. Like it's random, like it just happens. I mean, things never work together for good. Not on their own. It doesn't just happen. Rather, if anything good happens, it's because God is working it together. God is in the midst of that. Earlier in Romans 8, Paul takes time to describe the nature of this world, the world that you and I live in. And that because of sin, the things of this world, including you and me, we're subject to decay. Physicists call this entropy. Entropy, right? The gradual decline from order into disorder. Everyone and everything will eventually experience decay. We'll experience decay of our bodies. I mean, that's just the nature of things. The little grains of sand that we find on the beach, at one time, they were large rocks, but over time, order gives way to disorder. That's the nature of this world. Everything falls apart. The universe is continually expanding, right? What used to be one is now chaos. And so when things do come together, when it goes against the nature of this world, we recognize the working of God. If our health remains intact, it's simply because God is holding it up. If people love us, if someone is there to hug you or squeeze your hand or hold you through a time of trial, then we see God in that. God is bringing all things together. God is holding it up. Everything that goes well is a miracle of grace. And it's all around us. Now the last piece from this first verse is really the most basic. That although bad things happen, God works them for good. Now, this verse doesn't promise that those who love God will have better circumstances. That's not what the verse says. And it doesn't say that bad things are actually good things. Rather, it acknowledges that bad things really are bad things. But it promises that the God of the universe will work those things together for good. It will have a good effect at some point on your life. In John 11, the gospel writer tells the story of Jesus standing before the tomb of his good friend Lazarus. Lazarus had died 4 days before, right? And man, his friends really hoped that he would get there, that Jesus would get there before Lazarus died, but Jesus didn't get there before Lazarus died. And what we find is Jesus, not with a little smirk on his face like, hey, you guys thought this was a bad thing. This isn't really a bad thing. This is going to be a good thing. Just watch what I do. You're going to be amazed, and glory is going to show from me. It's going to be fantastic, but that's not what happens. Jesus doesn't have a little smirk on his face. Jesus is weeping before the tomb of his friend. He's angry because the bad thing he's about to work for good is really a bad thing. The story of Lazarus does not give you a light view of suffering. Like suffering's not a big deal. Saying bad things are really blessings in disguise and every cloud has a silver lining. The Bible doesn't say anything like that. Jesus' anger at the tomb of Lazarus proves how much he hates death. I mean, he hates loneliness, he hates alienation, he hates pain and suffering. Jesus hates it all so much that he was willing to come and be with us and experience it all himself so that eventually he could destroy it without destroying us. See, the promise is not that if you love God, good things will happen in your life. The promise is not that if you love God, the bad things aren't really bad, they're really good. The promise is that God will take those bad things and he'll work them for good. He'll work them for good in your life. Now, most of us are challenged with this. And the challenge goes something like this. When God takes those bad things, when bad things happen in our life, and we really believe that God will do something with that, but we put God on a timer. It's like, God, I want you to fix this, and I want you to fix it now. So we give him like a day. Maybe we give him a week. Some of you who are generous, you'll give him a month or a year. But God, you need to do this in my time. Come on, God, do your thing. Hurry up, I'm in pain. But we don't get to do that. We don't get to start a stopwatch with God. Don't give God an hour. Don't give God a week, not a month, not even a decade. The promise is not that we will see. I mean, it's not a guarantee that we get to see in our lifetime the good that comes out of the bad. The promise is that God will make sure that all these bad circumstances will work together for your life in its totality in his time. See, what Paul teaches us is that if God, in his wisdom, has withheld good things, things that you thought were good, then they would only be good in the short run. And so he holds them from us. Because in the long run, they would be terrible things. They'd be good in part, but not in the whole. And on the other hand, God will only bring bad things into your life, things that God knows are bad, in order to cure you of the things that can really destroy you in the long run. See, the premise is there are things that will really hurt you, things like foolishness and pride and selfishness and hardness of heart and the belief that you don't really need God. And these are the things that will hurt you in the long run. In the short run, things that are kind of our go-to, things like selfishness and self-deception, they might feel great, but in the long run, they destroy us. So your joy will be trauma-proof if you hold on to the truth that bad things will happen, but God will work them for good in his time. Bad things will come, but God has you. You can trust him. He is faithful. Now, the second major principle in this passage is that the good things we have cannot be lost. Right? If you've been a Jesus follower for any period of time, you know Romans 8:28. You've heard it. It's a feel-good verse. It's one that we speak over other people to bless them. We use it ourselves. A lot of the time we take this out of context, right? Without regard for what comes before or what comes after the passage. People use this passage all the time. It feels good. Now, maybe you've used this passage to reassure yourself that something good is going to come out of something bad. I mean, like you think, okay, I didn't get into this grad school, right, for whatever reason, but God's got a better grad school for me. Or I wanted to marry this man or this woman, but it didn't come together, so certainly God has something better for me. But understand that's not the promise. See, there's a little word between verses 28 and 29 that indicates that these two verses, they actually work together. And that little word is for. So we read, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. For those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. You see, God does not promise you better life circumstances if you love him. He promises you a better life. A better life. Grad school, Marriage, these are circumstances. Important, but they're circumstances. We're talking about a joy that goes beyond circumstance, that transcends circumstance. This is such an important principle. Jesus Christ did not suffer so that you would not suffer. He suffered so that when you suffer, you will be made like him. You will become like him. The gospel does not promise you better life circumstances. The gospel promises you a better life. Now look at this. I want you to see the goal toward which all of our circumstances are moving us. Right? It's not what most of us think. Right? Because most of us really think better circumstances are the goal. But Paul uses this word predestined. Right? And now he's not introducing the word to confuse you. He doesn't intend to explain the doctrine of predestination here or address the issues that arise with this word. He uses this word to bring us comfort. Because something that is predestined, it is fixed, it is held fast, it is immovable. What Paul means is that if you love God, you can count on the promise because the promise is absolutely sure, no matter what. So what is it that's sure? What is it that's fixed? It's what we're being conformed to. Paul is saying that God promises to change our inner essence, to change you into the very inner essence of Jesus Christ. To be a Christian is to become passionately in love with the person and the character of Jesus. You read about him in the Bible and you're amazed by the truth and the love that you see in his life. You see wisdom and utter conviction. You see incredible courage and brightness and radiance. The good that God is moving you toward through everything that happens in your life, whether externally good or bad, is your transformation into Christ's nature. If you love God, everything that happens in your life will mold you. It will shape you. It will sculpt you, polish you into the image of his Son. He is making you like him. This is the promise. This is the goal. He'll give you Christ's incredible compassion and courage. God is working everything that happens in your life toward that magnificent goal. It's predestined. It's guaranteed. It is sure. He's not promising you better life circumstances. He's promising you a far better life. A life of greatness. A life of humility. A life of nobility. An heir to the kingdom. He's promising you a life that goes on forever. Now that brings up the third point, and I'll wrap up with this. Now, why can you be joyful, no matter what, no matter the circumstance? Well, your bad things turn out for good. Your good things can never be lost, and the best is yet to come. And if you understand what is to come, you can handle anything in the here and now. Well, one of the most astounding things in Romans 8:30 is that he says that those he predestined, he also called, and those he called, he also justified, and those he justified, he also glorified. So he's going to glorify us. But that word, glorified, it's actually written in the past tense, past perfect tense, like it already happened, and it's going to continue to happen throughout all eternity. Right? But when we read this, I'm thinking, shouldn't Paul say, okay, the ones he foreknew, he predestined, and then he justified, and then he will glorify. Like that's going to happen. But the Apostle Paul is so absolutely certain that you are bound, that God is going to make you as beautiful as Jesus and give you all these incredible things, that he writes of the glorification as an accomplished fact. It's already happened. He talks about it in the past tense because it is as good as done. He's going to not let anything or anyone in life get between you and that goal. You are predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, to share in and display his glory. And now, I don't want you to think that this talk about glory and about heaven, about eternity, that it makes light of suffering. Like, well, suffering should be no big deal for you. That's not what's happening here. Suffering is real. Pain is real. Bad things are really bad things. But this picture of glory, this hope, is the only worldview that takes our brokenness seriously. Our souls are so great and our suffering can be so deep that nothing but this promise of glory can overwhelm it. Glory doesn't trivialize human brokenness. It's the only thing that takes it seriously. What else could deal with the hurts of our hearts? Your soul is too great for anything less. And so today, as we pause to remember, and maybe you feel some of that pain, know that the joy of the Lord is yours today. It's yours today, yours to grab hold of. And it's always there, despite the circumstance. Because in Christ, bad things will become good things. And good things will never be lost. And the best things are yet to come. And that, my friends, is a sure thing. Let's pray.